Hello. Thank you very much for having me here in JS Poland. I'm very excited to be part of this conference. And I'm going to introduce myself for those that don't know me. I am Natalia Venditto. I am a principal solutions architect at NetCentric. I am also a Google developer expert for Angular and web technologies, a Auth0 ambassador, and a Women Tech Makers ambassador. And today, I want to talk to you about a little bit about why static websites matter and why they are such a win-win for every developer. I am sure everyone is or should be concerned about achieving great performance. And one of the ways of knowing how our client site will score with performance is to pay attention to these metrics that you see on the screen. They were released this year, but they have the most weight already in defining how our sites perform at runtime and at load time. And basically, I want you to pay special attention to the CLS or cumulative layout shift, because this metric represents the amount of pixels any item or any element in the page may be displaced in the layout during load time of the page, and basically it's increased by a factor. So if content is shifted a lot, the CLS will be higher, and that's basically a big problem for dynamic applications. That's really what happens for client-side render sites, and even with server-side render sites after you bootstrap your JavaScript framework. But we have alternatives, and there is specifically a subset of sites that really merit this alternative. And these sites are blog sites and documentation sites. And the alternative, when we're talking about Angular specifically, it's Scully. Scully is a static site generator. It is about 1 year old and released the stable version in September this year, if I am not mistaken. And it is compatible with Angular 8 and up and Node 10 and up. And how it works is it uses Puppeteer or the Puppeteer API to render dynamic pages as HTML content in a headless Chromium browser. So at build time, Scully does this whole data fetching that your site may need, or that your page may need, that your application may need, all the logical operations. It handles all the routing, etc., and then produces this HTML static output, like we said, again via Puppeteer, and then saves this kind of a snapshot in the distribution/static folder. This is the default. You can also configure it to be whatever you want it to be. Of course, it needs a router-enabled application to work, because basically Scully maps each route to a path. So the router links become regular links. When you install Scully and you build the application, you can then run the static generation. By triggering this process, you're basically making use of a bunch of built-in plugins that take care of different concerns through the cycle. So you have the router handling plugins at the top, right? They are the plugins that discover the routes. Then the render plugins that take care of transforming the HTML output, the file handler plugins used by the inbuilt content folder plugins that take care of different file document extensions, for example, Markdown. And finally, you have the route discovery done and the all done plugins that can trigger scripts or post-processing when those processes are completed. Apart from the inbuilt plugins, you can write your own, and you can integrate them very easily into the static site generation. But there is yet another way to extend Scully, and that's with the power of Angular schematics, as I'm going to demonstrate later in the demo. So finally, another important feature of Scully is that it allows us to start a server to serve the static files locally during development time, and then do a comparison of how your dynamic Angular distribution behaves as compared to the static one in terms of performance and everything else. So what's the gain of static websites? Well, we gain in performance, search engine optimization. We can embrace the Jamstack And we can also leverage cloud infrastructure and CDCI. In the following demo, we're going to, in a few minutes, because you're going to see me do this live practically, we're going to create an Angular application, install schematics module to help us create a documentation site. We're going to publish the repository in GitHub, and we're going to deploy that to Azure Apps, which will create a function for continuous integration. And finally, we're going to publish it and see it live. So let's do it. So for the sake of brevity, I have already generated a new Angular application using the CLI with the command ng-new and the name of my application, in this case, docs-app. And I have also installed Scully, also with the ng-add command or schematics command, ng-add alt scully.io /init, and that makes sure that we have installed all the necessary dependencies that Scully needs to run, but also it's going to generate the Scully configurations, it's going to install the polyfills, it's going to also update the package.json, not only with dependencies, but also with the necessary scripts to run Scully. And finally, I ran a build, and I ran a build not only because I wanted to make sure that everything went smoothly, but also because the next module that we're going to install, or package that we're going to install, it's basically depends on Scully and needs for Scully to have already run or to have already been built. So we have all the JavaScript files necessary for this new module to be executed or to be ran. And this module is a custom schematic that I wrote back in the day in order to easily generate documentation sites. So this module is by no means a stable version. I keep working and playing with it. You are welcome to open pull requests if you want, but you're also welcome to use it and to improve it or optimize it and share it back to the community. So in order to install it, you have to run ng-add alt amphibia creativa /scully-docs, and this is going to be all you need to generate the component, to generate the module, to also update the configurations necessary to have a documentation site up and running, including a site navigation. But I also, in order to, again, save time because we don't have a lot, already made some changes to the index.html, to the application template, and added some styles, and also added a default route, so it's easier to work with this application. And once we see it deployed in public, you're going to have a better understanding on how it works. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually build this application. And in this case, it's going to fail. And you are going to ask yourself why I wanted to fail, right? And I wanted to fail because I wanted to make extra sure you grasped this concept. So if you write your own module where you want to inject static content, that's entirely possible with Scully. However, you have to make sure, and now let's go to the IDE, and you see that I have added the Scully dash content element to my template. But in order for it to work and actually inject static content, we have to also import the Scully lib module to our module, and we have to import it over here as well. And once we do that, now we can for sure know that static content is going to be injected. So what we're going to do now is we're going to build it again. This time it's going to work. It's going to take nothing, seconds. We're going to clear and we're going to start adding actual markdown content. And how are we going to generate this content? We are going to be using the custom schematic that we just installed in order to extend the Scully functionality and make it easy to create documentation sites and generate documentation pages. So how we do this, we're going to run ng-generate amphibia creativa Scully docs, which is the collection, doc, which is the name of the schematic. And when we run it, it's going to prompt us to give it a title for this schematic, or for this new content page. And if you remember, we configured our application to have a default route called homepage. So we're gonna create this first route. Homepage, we're going to accept the default. And we're going to create yet another one because we want to have a little bit more substance to work with. So we're going to generate another one. We're going to call this one doc1. Again, accept the defaults. And if we go now to our application, we're going to see that we have a new folder over here, and that we have those two pages that we just created, or files that we just created, markdown files, in our code base. And we are going to open them, and if you take a close look, we'll see that we have a front matter configuration over here, a YAML configuration over here, and we're going to set the publish status to true, and we're going to write some random stuff over here. Remember that you are meant to write markdown, right? That is then going to be converted to HTML during the static generation phase. But for the sake of, again, time, we're going to do this quickly. What is important is that the publish state is set to true, because that is going to make our routes available in the route Scully service, or Scully route service. And now now we have some markdown files. We're going to finally run Scully to generate static content. Let's clear this up. And we are going to run npm run Scully. And what is going to happen right now is that Scully is going to discover all these new routes that we have in our application, and it's going to render HTML content from those routes, as you can see here in the log output. And now we have them generated. We can see them over here in a distribution folder in the statics, docs, and we have these two files. We have these two HTML files with all the static assets in line. What we want to do now is we want to actually see this. So we're going to run Scully serve, and this is going to, as we explained earlier, launch two servers, one on port 1864 for our dynamic Angular distribution, and another one on port 1668 for our static server. So if we now go to the localhost port 1668, we're already going to see our application working because we just launched the static server and everything works as expected. But of course, we wanted to have it publicly available. We want to have our application in the internet, and for that we are going to use today the static web apps service, Microsoft Azure. And I already have one application deployed or built and deployed that I used as a reference to learn, but also I want to take 1 minute to publicly thank Wasim Shegam, because he sat down with me for 1 hour trying to find an issue or find a solution to an issue I was facing, and he actually gave me a pointer on how to do this in a different way, so it worked. And this is why I am here today, passing this knowledge over to you. And so this is the application I used to learn myself, and right now we're going to create a new one that is going to be exactly like this first one. And what we need to, when we add a new web application or static web application, we are going to be prompted to select a resource group. And in my case, where I have Node.js and all these things, is going to be this one. And I also need to, or we need to give it a name. Let's give it docs app test, and a region can be the one that is more beneficial to you in terms of latency. And we also need to sign in with GitHub. Remember, your code needs to be in GitHub in order to have it deployed to the static web app service. So I'm going to authorize. You need to do this every time you deploy a new application. And now I'm going to choose myself as the organization. It's going to load all my repositories, so I can just select the one I want to deploy as a static web app. And I also need to select the branch. And then it's going to tell me, okay, what are your build presets? And it's going to give you a list of frameworks and static site generators, but unfortunately, Scully is not in this list. So we are going to just select Angular for now, and then it's going to give us, okay, where is your app location? And you definitely leave it as like it is. API doesn't matter at the moment, but then we are going to have to complete this with this /static for the app artifact location. Okay, so let's review and create. And I'm fine with all this. It's going to start initializing as soon as I create it. So once the deployment is complete, we can go to the resource and we can see a few of the, or we can have an overview of our new static web application in the portal. And we can see things like, for example, we have the external URL where we can visit this application once it's built and deployed. We also see the source. We see what resource group we have configured, what is the location, the type of subscription, and some other interesting information. We also have a direct link to browse it once it's published. But what I want to go and see is this, our workflow or action already there in GitHub, generated and committed by the Microsoft static apps or web static apps portal. And I have it already here for you to see. I hope it's not too small and you can actually read what it says. This is the workflow, but again, if you cannot read what it says, just visit the repository that I mentioned earlier, and then you can basically have all you need to deploy this web application. I want to make a point over here because it's something that is actually kind of important, is that if you go to the repository itself, you'll see that we have these scripts over here. These scripts were written by Wasim, and they are necessary for Puppeteer to be instantiated, let's say for a Chromium browser instance to be instantiated by Puppeteer in the Docker container where our web application is going to be running or to be deployed to. So if we go back to the workflows, and I want you to see what you have to actually do for your Scully app to be or for Scully to actually generate static content every time you add new markdown files or whatever type of file you are using to generate your static content. So we're going to have to edit this file. I'm gonna do it directly in GitHub, and we're going to have to to do the following. We're going to add a new key here that is going to be called app build command, and we're going to say echo empty. What we want is for our build pipeline to completely ignore the default web apps build command. So we're going to just give it an empty or an empty string to completely ignore this. And then we're going to go up here, and we're going to yes, we're going to over here. I don't want to do it in the wrong place because YAML. So down here we're going to create a new name. Yes, I know. And this is going to be called build Angular and Scully. And we're going to give it an ID, Angular Scully. And we are going to give it a command to run. So it has to run npm install to install all the dependencies, and also npm run build. There are obviously better ways to do this, but let's go straight to the point. Npm run build prod to make sure that we have the right production binary, and npm run Scully. And now we're going to pass another flag, which is scan routes, because we want to make sure that every single time that we add new content, Scully is run to detect this new or to discover these new routes and generate HTML from them. So it doesn't like this bad indentation mapping entry. Okay, sorry, YAML. Okay, I wasn't sure if just didn't like my ID. Okay, and now we also are going to add a down here. We're going to add at the same level as width, an environmental pre-built command that is going to say, go pick up these scripts and run the setup Puppeteer. And I think this is it. So what we are doing, again, what we are doing here is we are overriding the preset build command of Angular web apps, of static web apps, and we are creating our own step in the workflow. And now we're going to start commit. We're going to commit these changes. And as soon as we commit the changes, a new action is going to be put on queue. So yes, every time you do any merges, that you commit any code and do a merge to the base branch that you have set up in your continuous integration configuration, you are going to trigger a new build and deploy of your application. So if we save that configuration and we go to the Actions tab and we find our workflow, we can go directly to the log and we can see step by step how it's building and deploying the application. In this case, we have already completed everything. As you can see, we had a successful build and deploy of our application, and it's finished uploading it, and we can already go and see this web application online. So let's go and click here, and yes, there it is. It's a very basic application right now, but it is exactly what we have instructed Scully and Angular to do, and we have our two documentation pages in place. And yes, I hope you really enjoyed this this presentation, and that you start running, experimenting and playing with Angular, with Scully, with the Jamstack, and with static web app services by Microsoft Azure. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the conference and the day, and an amazing weekend.